So today I'm going to talk about whether it makes sense to move to Canada in year 2024. So I'm going to talk about two categories. Number one is for international students. Second is for permanent residents who had applied for like permanent residency and all. They've got the permanent residency, and now based on the news and all, they're all confused whether they should move to Canada or not. Right. So first is I moved to Canada about 8 or 9 years ago. I myself have seen that the quality of life has deteriorated a lot, and this has been because of a lot of the policies of the current government, right? Still, the things are not so bad. Things are fixable, and the things would be fixed also in the coming time. But the situation is still going to get worse in the next 1 to 2 years, and then it's going to start getting better, right? So let's talk about the first category, which is international students. Does it make sense for you to come to Canada in 2024 as international students or not? So I think first see what options do you have, right? What are the other countries where you want to apply? What is the study which you are applying to? What is the type of college, what is the type of university you are getting to, right? For example, you apply to University of Toronto, you apply to any of the other universities, you're getting full scholarship. There's no question, just straight away, pack your bags, come to Canada, right? Now, if you're applying to any of the private colleges and all, should you come to Canada or not? I would say double, like, think twice before you come to Canada. Reason is, in last 2 years, close to at least more than 1 million students, international students came to Canada. And if you see the number of permanent residence applications that are approved for students would be between 100K to 200K per year, right? So a lot of the students would be facing challenge for becoming international students, for becoming permanent residents, because the path won't be so smooth, right? And if you see the number of scores also which are needed now to become a permanent resident, it's way high, very high now these days, right? And it's going to become tougher and tougher. It's just because the government had opened the gates for everyone to come, right? And there was no control. So there was no balance also, right? So people who are already in Canada, they would keep applying and all. And the people who will be coming in your batches, they would be also applying for permanent residence. There's going to be huge competition in next 2 to 3 years, right? So again, if you're coming into one of the best universities, definitely you should come to Canada, right? If you're very sure about your skills and all, if you feel you're a very, very bright student, you won't face any issues and all, 100% come to Canada, right? But if you're on the margin, I would say try to consider other countries also. Like, try to consider how much is the fee you are paying, right? What happens if you don't become a permanent resident, if you have to come back to your country? Like, what would your family situation and all would be, right? So make all of these decisions. And as I said, the path to permanent residency was very, very smooth up till now in Canada, but I am sure that's going to become very tough, especially because Canada invited so much students like in the last 2 or 3 years. And because of that, the number of permanent resident applications won't increase that much, right? So the pressure on becoming a permanent resident would increase a lot, right? So now let's talk about the second category. As a permanent resident who has been working, who has some work experience and all, should you come to Canada or not, right? So the number one question would be, which country are you coming from, right? So like, so a lot of countries, right, they're still facing like dire situation and all, dire economic crisis, dire financial crisis. Some countries are are targeted by war and all, right? So if you're coming from those countries, definitely Canada should be your choice. There's no question about it. Like, again, you got a very nice opportunity which will change your life. Come to Canada again. Like, still, Canada is the best country for immigrants, right? Situation has deteriorated a lot. Means it used to be best from all perspectives earlier, like when I moved, but now things have changed. Things have become very, very expensive. But still, if you think about the culture and the type of feeling that you'll get while visiting, like while coming to Canada, is way different as compared to any other country, right? So for immigrants, it is still one of the best countries, right? Earlier, it was no doubtly like the best country, right? So depending upon which country you're coming from, that makes a clear choice whether you should come or not, right? So let's think about, if you're coming from India, if you're coming from China, or like suppose you're coming from like Brazil or Mexico and all, where you might, or like some other country where you might have already have good salaries and all, right? So now you're on the border whether you should come here or not, right? So I think it all depends what type of skills do you have. For example, I was living in Delhi, like in India before, and I was living in a metropolitan city. So the challenges in metropolitan city was like the house prices and all used to be 10x as compared to the salaries. Could be more also at that time, right? Now the salaries have increased a lot in India. the house prices have not increased that much, right? So still the situation has improved in India. But comparing to Canada, so in Canada, like suppose if you were earning 100K, a nice home used to come between like 400, 500K and all, right? And now even if the salaries have not increased, the house prices in like bigger cities like Toronto and Vancouver has become 1.5 million, right? So if you compare the challenges of the bigger cities in the developing nations versus Canada, like Canada has a worse situation right now. So settling down as a family would be very difficult in one of the bigger cities in Canada. Now, if you're working from home, right, if you have 100% full flexibility to work from anywhere, you can still look at like very good cities, right? So Ontario also has very good cities like Ottawa is there, London is there, Windsor is there, which still have, which are not so expensive still, right? And where you can find some jobs, but like again, primarily rely on like online jobs and all, if you can have a work from home job. And like Calgary, Edmonton, they're not so expensive. Saskatchewan is not so expensive and all. So still they are affordable places where you can live, right? But if you get a job and you have to either move to Toronto, like GT area, Greater Toronto area, any around the suburbs and all, or Vancouver, I don't think so. I won't recommend anyone to come there because it will be very difficult for you to settle down as a family, right? Other is again like based on your skills, if you're able to secure a job in any of the smaller cities, you will have a way nicer quality of life. Like I myself, I never wanted to live in a bigger city. That was one of the reasons. But like in India, so I wanted to live into smaller cities where I have employment opportunities also. But in Canada, when you think about employment opportunities in smaller cities, it is way less as compared to some of the other countries. For example, in US, even the smaller countries have a lot of employment opportunities. But I've seen people struggling a lot when it comes to finding employment in the smaller cities. So as a permanent resident, if you can find a job already in one of the smaller cities and you're very sure that your job would be there, still Canada is worse. Like the situation has deteriorated. Things are very expensive, but not that bad, right? So you might still be very happy if you come to Canada. But again, if you're coming to Toronto, if you're coming to Vancouver, around that area, things are very, very expensive. The crime has increased like a lot as compared to what it was previously. Homelessness has increased a lot and all. So maybe you should come, you should visit, try to see and all, and then make a decision rather than just straight away coming and deciding, okay, whether you should move. I myself would double consider it. Probably if I have to move to these cities, I'll try to compare it to other countries also, what my options are, right? But right now, I live in London, Ontario. If I have to move here, I would again, like anytime, even because of the bad situation right now Canada is in, still like even these cities, they are still in good condition, not so bad, right? So, and again, like now it all depends like what is your family income. If you have two kids and like both the husband and the wife they're working, so I would say if your family income is above 200K, there you would not have a tough time at all moving to Canada. But if your family income is below 100K for whatever reason, you would for sure have a very, very tough time living in Canada in any of the cities, right? So if your family's income is more than 200K, you will still have tough time in Toronto or in Vancouver to settle down easily, right? But any of the other cities and all, you won't have tough time if your family like income is around that area. But if your again family income is below 100K or like 120K, 130K and all below that, you would have an okay time now depending upon the which city you move to, right? It won't be very easy for you, right? If the family income is below 100K, for sure you'll have a tough time right now. It won't be as easy, right? It's just tough. You would be able to survive, you'll be able to do good. Now it all depends where you're coming from, right? If the income has been higher, the decision would have been very easy. Next is look at the type of skills you have, right? Like whether smaller cities and all would need those skills and all or not. I think again, like I would again stress upon depending, compare where exactly do you want to live in Canada. There are still many good cities which are still affordable. There are few cities which have become very, very expensive, like Toronto area, like the whole Toronto area has become very expensive. Like there are other Ontario itself has become more expensive, like the prices has increased 2 to 3 times. Vancouver is very expensive, right? Like Montreal has become very expensive, like mean the cost has increased to double now, right? But then talk about other provinces like Saskatchewan, right? It's not expensive. Winnipeg is not expensive and all. like Alberta, it's still good. Halifax is good, right? New Brunswick, it's good and all. So all of these, if you're moving to these, right, the cost of living has definitely increased as compared to earlier standards, but it's not still not so high, right? So again, make your decision. Canada is not in a very, very bad situation. Like it is definitely in a bad situation as compared to when I arrived, like in a few years, like around 7 or 8 years ago. I see a huge difference, right? But still, if I have to again move, I have to decide upon the country. If I move to my current city, I would again like keep Canada as the best place, right? I would still say, at least when I moved to US earlier, and then from US I moved to Canada. So when I moved to Canada, it just felt that I moved to my hometown where I grew, right? Like the feeling was that. So for immigrants, I prefer, like for me, because I was earning well in US also, and earning well in Canada also. For me, the difference in the salary was not so much of a thing, right? For me, more was, do I feel it like home or not? So Canada, like the day I came, I always felt like home, and now I'm sure the cultural values that my kid will get, right? Like in US, I would have to be very cautious, like where my kids are going, whether will they be bullied or not, also. But in Canada, at least the chances of bullying, right? Again, like I don't know what could happen like in future and all. At least the chances right now, if you compare to any other country, it would be minimal in terms of like racism, in terms of bullyism and all. Still, it has like one of the best cultures. So I hope this video would have helped you in trying to see whether you want to move to Canada or not. Again, I was honest with my opinions, right? Canada for me is still the best country. Again, like the situation earlier, it was like way, way higher. The decision was clear, right? If I had to move, like the decision was clear. Now, if I have to move to Toronto, like from India and all, or if I had to move to Vancouver, I would have given a second thought. But if I had to move to like one of smaller cities and all, like the way I am in right now, still Canada is the number one spot for me, right? So again, thank you. And again, please subscribe to my channel, watch my videos because I share about the policies and all what the Canadian government is coming out with, right? Whether those are useful, whether they are not and all. And that's all based on data, right? Not just opinions. So I try to share my data. So subscribe to my channel, like my video so that it helps. Thank you.